Debbie, I got to talk to you about this. Have you heard about these so-called rabbis leading a movement against Trump? They're going to proudly walk out at the AIPAC conference, which, of course, Trump is attending instead of the Fox debate, though he had planned the AIPAC debate beforehand. I know you and I see to eye about so-called rabbis, but we probably have stronger feelings about the Orthodox, real rabbis who are speaking out hypocritically, as opposed to people who probably 2/3 of their congregation aren't even really Jewish anyhow. Give me your thoughts about this.
Yeah, I mean, these rabbis that are leading this, these so-called rabbis that are leading this protest against Trump at AIPAC are a bunch of frauds and idiots, and frankly, they are in bed with the enemies of the Jewish people, because their biggest objection to Trump is not that he said, and he's wavered back and forth, so I don't know which position he'll take as president. That is a problem. But that's not their biggest problem when he said he wanted the United States to remain neutral in negotiations between Israel and the Palestinians. That, frankly, I think they really support. Their biggest problem with Trump, as they've stated, is that he has made statements about illegal aliens from Mexico and about Muslims. And frankly, most of those statements about Muslims are true. They are a threat to this country. They're a threat to our survival as Americans. They're a threat to our freedoms. And they are a threat to the practice of Judaism. Now, these guys wouldn't know the practice of Judaism to punch them in the face, because that's not what they're engaged in. They're not real rabbis. They know very little about the religion. I looked up a lot of these people's descriptions. You and I discussed this before, and we looked into these people. And one of these rabbis calls himself the rock and roll rabbi.
Yeah, there's the rock and roll rabbi, and then there's Baldy, whose picture is him with his bald head, looking like kind of looks like that Eric Erickson guy, like a Jewish version of him.
And he, he doesn't have a yarmulke on.
Yeah.
The rock and roll rabbi. I tried to listen to one of his songs, and this guy is not rock and roll. He's like the worst folk singer alive. That's really tough. That's a large pool for the contest. This guy is singing.
Oh wait, that was funny.
To sheep's being beheaded. All right, this was torture. It was painful, and I think they should play it in Gitmo for the few remaining terrorists that Obama has.
Wait, let me interrupt. We're talking. Debbie, wait, hold on. I want to let people know who we're talking about.
So-called rabbis they have nothing to do with Judaism. They don't represent me. Most of the people that are their congregants, like you said, are probably not even Jewish. All right, it's not Judaism. It's some kind of cult they created for people who don't really want to keep Judaism and want to pretend they're still Jews.
Nor should they, by the way.
These guys are frauds. Donald Trump's daughter was converted to Orthodox Judaism by my first cousin's father-in-law. I do think that, I do have questions about the conversion, but whatever. She's a practicing Jew. She has 2 children who are Jewish and a third on the way. And Donald Trump, I think, I am concerned about how he's gone back and forth on the Israel thing, and I don't know which one we'll get as president. And he does have a lot of business interests in the Middle East. These people don't care about that. That's not their concern. Their concern is that he's spoken out against the enemies of Western culture, the enemies of the Jewish people, and they don't like that, because they would rather be in bed having sex with the enemies of the Jewish people. And not just figuratively. I think with a lot of people, literally.
Yeah, Debbie, I want to just point out the names. We are talking about so-called Rabbi David Paskin. If people, what? I'm sorry, Debbie, what was that?
I can't hear you again.
Okay, we were talking about so-called Rabbi David Paskin out of some so-called synagogue in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. That's the rock and roll rabbi who you seem to say has a lot more in common with like a really bad wannabe Dan Fogelberg than a really bad wannabe Chuck Berry, for example. And we're also talking about so-called Rabbi Jeff Salkin. That's the baldy who, as Howard Stern used to call John DeBella, who really should have a yarmulke on. It's only for a picture. And when you have a head like that, you don't have great hair. you might want to really consider for personal reasons to wear yarmulke. That's the so-called martini rabbi, because he thinks you can Google, what's his name, Jeff Salkin, because he likes people to have their Judaism shaken, not stirred. And just to clarify one point you made, the reason we're saying they're not Jewish is these are often intermarried. Judaism is passed on through the woman. It's often Jewish men marrying non-Jewish women, and they like to think that they're Jewish, and Reform Judaism makes it easy. They pay these so-called rabbis big salaries, and then they don't rock the boat, play up to their liberalism, etc. So that's a little clarification for people. And I do want to add one more thing. These are the ones who are willing to go to AIPAC. I mean, there are even worse Obama rabbis, so-called rabbis. Those are like the lesbos who wear the tallis that's rainbow-colored, and they're the ones who Obama brings in for events. So we're not even in
By the way, the rock and roll rabbi wears the rainbow-colored tallis, too. For those who are listening who don't know, a tallis is a Jewish prayer shawl.
Yeah, but men are supposed to wear them, not rainbow-colored, really.
Right.
But I guess the point for people listening is, what bothers me is the newspapers put these headlines in there like these are real rabbis. They're not. I mean, that's the point we want to make. These people are a joke. They don't keep Shabbos. They don't pray with a minyan. They don't, keep kosher. It's a joke. It's a scam to make people who...
And for those listening, like Shabbos is the Jewish Sabbath, Shabbat, and also a minyan is the 10 men of a certain age. They have to be past age 13, or higher in order to, you need 10 men of that age in order to have a full prayer service and so on.
And I would say, the problem real Judaism would have with Trump, you want to look at what the Torah actually says, is he's just way too liberal. That would be the problem a real Jew would have with Trump, I would guess.
Right, exactly. That's true.
Cruz would be the...
That's true. And by the way, the thing I noticed about these rabbis is, in real Judaism, a rabbi is a rabbi. That's it. They don't have to have a nickname, the rock and roll rabbi, the martini rabbi. They don't have to have a gimmick. This isn't show business.
Right.
This isn't something you sell. It's a religion. It's not marketing. And yes, every religion goes into certain marketing and whatever. But this is not a reality TV show or a rock and roll tour or something like that, and it's ridiculous that these so-called rabbis have tried to make it into that. I mean, this one rabbi you sent me the link to him, I think this Martini rabbi, he likes to quote Bob Dylan and Mick Jagger in his sermons. I mean, this is absurd.
Well, hey, I'm for quoting Sympathy for the Devil.
Start me up. It's just not a religion.
That's Moda Ani Lefanecha, which we say in the morning is sort of like start me up. And Sympathy for the Devil is
good. For that you woke up.
I know.
It's not, let's snort some coke, or in the case of one of Mick Jagger's colleagues, I can't remember which one, let's snort up my father's ashes. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Bob Dylan, of course, I don't think he's quoting Neighborhood Bully, his extremely pro-Israel song. I would get behind that if Bob Dylan. He's had an interesting relationship to Judaism, who is Jewish.
Yeah, I was going to say, he thinks he's a Christian now.
I don't know what he is, but, there are some Bob Dylan quotes which would be perfectly kosher. Oh, it's tangential here, but, as long as we're talking about rabbis with nicknames, I know there is a supposedly Orthodox one who somehow was designated America's rabbi, who you have some strong feelings about, even though he's ostensibly a Republican.
Yeah, what is this guy's name? Rabbi Spiro, I think?
Oh, no, not Ken Spiro. He's all right. Rabbi Shmuley both teach. Rabbi Spiro's in Israel.
No, I don't like the Spiro guy either, but he's in bed with Grover Norquist, the jihadist.
Oh.
And he actually narked on me, like a capo to Grover Norquist. So I don't like him. I think he's a fraud. Right. Rabbi R.H. Spiro. The other one, Rabbi Shmuley Botas, he's not America's rabbi either. I mean, these people, they're supposed to be Orthodox rabbis, and now they have gimmicks, and they're calling themselves America's rabbi. I don't know. America didn't have a ballot vote on who the favorite rabbi was, and I guarantee you if they did, it probably wouldn't be these people, despite the fact that this rabbi Shmuly tries to promote himself shamelessly anywhere he can, whether it was on the Oprah show when they used to be on, or on one of those TV networks, I think TLC, when he had that show Shalom in the Home, which really seemed to be about Rabbi Boteach asking couples about their sex life so he could live vicarious for them or whatever. I mean, this guy is an embarrassment to the Jewish people. He's all about promoting himself and making money. He's not about being a rabbi or about Judaism. And that's why he was kicked out of the Chabad movement of Judaism.
Right. And then there's that guy in L.A., the Rabbi Yonah. My experience with him was he was making post after post about how Trump is dangerous. Nothing about Obama, nothing about Hillary, nothing about... This really gets under my skin because he calls himself Orthodox. This is Pico Shul. Sorry, allergies. Pico and then space Shul. Look at this guy. Follow him on Twitter and Facebook, calling himself Orthodox and making these horrible Trump Nazi comparisons, which really Jews should know better about doing.
Yeah, I mean, listen. Most of my family on both sides was wiped out in the Holocaust. My maternal grandparents were survivors. And, Hitler and the Nazis murdered millions of Jews and millions of other people. They sent people to gas chambers and ovens to die. They tortured people through hard labor. They turned Jews into lampshades. All right? To compare Donald Trump to anything like this, just because you don't like his views on immigration, which are necessary to maintain any semblance of a country, or just because you don't want him to be president, is absolutely ridiculous. He has nothing to do with Hitler, not even close. And people who do this and engage in this hyperbole are just idiots, and it takes away any credibility they may have ever had.
And Debbie, I want to point out two real lies that are disingenuous. Okay, if they call out Trump for what they say about Muslims, it's foolish, and the Martini rabbis really into interfaith dialogue with Muslims, which is a scam in itself. But I just want to say that it's really, they know better than to say that Trump is inciting violence. They know what's really going on. They know Soros is funding this. They know what Black Lives Matter is. It's just a lie. Okay, he did call for keeping Muslims out, which isn't strong enough in my opinion. But also saying his terrible statements about Hispanics. No, he's talking about illegals. There's a big difference there. And also, what did he say about African Americans? He didn't say anything about African Americans. They're saying, he's saying hostile things. They just throw that in there. It's like with John Rocker 10, 15 years ago. They said, he said these anti-black statements, when he did say certain statements, but none of them were anti-black.
Right. I mean, it's just, the bottom line is they're trying to stop Trump from becoming president. They're trying to make names for themselves,
right,
and get in the media. And all of these things you say are absolutely true. I haven't heard Trump ever say anything against black people.
Right.
I mean, heck, if you Google him, and this is something that's problematic for me, if you Google him and Al Sharpton, you'll see a zillion pictures of them hanging out together over the years. He'll say it's because I'm a businessman and I needed Al Sharpton not to boycott my businesses or whatever. But I mean, he's not anti-black. I mean, Omarosa or Dennis Rodman, who are in his corner. And a lot of black people that I know love him and are going to vote for him. It's just to paint this guy as, a far right-wing Nazi extremist. It's just not the case. He's actually a liberal, in my opinion. And I don't know if he's going to do any of these things. Like you said, the thing about Muslims didn't go far enough because he said he wanted to stop the immigration of Muslims to the United States until, quote, we figure what the heck is going on. Well, that doesn't mean anything. That means, I figured out what's going on, so let's keep going. Right,
of course. Any final thoughts on these so-called rabbis of any of the type? Just a message to middle America, which may hear this, from Jews who try at least to practice real Judaism. What do you want?
Yeah, listen, the so-called leadership of the Jewish community, which is always unelected, like a Politburo, they appoint themselves and they keep the same people up there, is far more liberal than Jewish America. Yes, Jews in America who are last Jews and they're, Jews in name only, they are liberal. but they're not half as liberal as the so-called leadership that, purports to lead them. These guys are not my leaders. If you go to my synagogue, which is Orthodox, 90% of the people vote Republican, and probably 90% of the people will vote for Donald Trump if, as I believe he will be, he becomes the eventual Republican nominee for president. These people lead people that may not be Jews for the most part at all, and people who are Jewish by birth only, but it's like an accident of birth. All right, that's their flock. That's their congregation. Those people in 50 years and their children are not going to be Jews. So they don't represent anything that has anything to do with Judaism, and nobody should see them and say, "Oh, rabbis don't support Donald Trump." No, political activists from the left who are Jewish, those are the people we're talking about here.
And I was going to say, one final thought on this, and I have more respect for the Bernie Sanders of this world who are Jewish, who don't claim to be religious and don't try to be something that they're not, than all these fake rabbis trying to have it both ways.
Well, I don't like Bernie Sanders.
I don't either.
I have no respect for him at all, ever, anyway. I think he's kind of like disowned being Jewish, and he's very anti-Israel and stuff like that.
Yeah, but he's not fake.
He claims to be culturally Jewish, which I don't know what that means, because there's really no such thing as a distinct Jewish culture. But even the foods that people think are Jewish foods are not really Jewish in nature. But, yes, he is more honest than they are, but he's still dishonest.
Yes.
Not honest guy.
I'm just saying he's better than the worst of them.
Yeah, hopefully we'll never have to choose between those choices.
I think Bernie's finished. I think the Jew we have to worry about is Hillary's son-in-law would be the one closest to the White House I'm worried about. All right, Debbie. Thank you for your time as always. Shabbat shalom.